We have been pushed to the margins. We have become oppressed.
We're the original homeless people.
To survive when you're homeless suggests that you have an incredible amount of ability.
Just being able to, having to go to some of the hostels and use those services definitely leads to a very eye-opening way of how people live their lives in contrast to, I guess, the majority of the population.
A lot of the difficulties with our people today is that they don't trust those in authority.
Actually, we never had a homeless problem 500 years ago.
Hamilton is like any other large city in Canada. Its economy is based on a major industry, and that industry is steel. Like other urban communities, Hamilton has a large Aboriginal population. A recent survey puts the number of Aboriginal people at approximately 12,000. The majority have made the transition from life on a reservation to life in a city as seamless as possible. But for some, the transition hasn't been so easy. They have hit hard times, struggled to make ends meet, and have ended up on the streets.
We have become homeless within our own lands. We have been pushed to the margins. We have become oppressed. Our voices have been suppressed. We've lost our languages, our culture, and it seems like we've become a proud nation, as Dayayage Alfred from the University of Victoria has said. We've become proud nations, echoes of proud nations within our own lands.
We're very adept at being homeless. You know, we're the original homeless people. You know, right from the beginning of way back when they came into our country in the first place. Our ancestral lands were taken away from us. We were put on reserves. We've been homeless for a long time.
500 years ago, there was no homeless people in this land. We all had gifts that we could share to the community, and that's what everybody did. Everybody contributing to the whole for the good of everybody else. And that's the way the Creator planned it. That's the way He gave all those instructions to every nation.
And I think that a lot of Native people have been affected by this. And I think this leads to the emptiness, that void inside their heart that leads them to homelessness.
Most of the Aboriginal group come from the Brantford area and from the reservations around Hamilton. Although we do get them from right across Canada, probably the greatest percentage would be from Northern Ontario, but we do get some from the Northwest Territories and the Western provinces. The emergency hostel that we have here, we basically open the doors at 7 o'clock and we take in the men who are whoever's at the side door, and we allocate the beds. Now the first priority are those that were here the night before and still have nights left. We take them in, and then whatever beds are left, we allocate those usually to those who are new to Good Shepherd this month. And then if we still have beds left, anyone that's been here earlier in the month but wasn't here last night, we then put them in those beds until the beds are full.
In Hamilton, the shelter system is so inadequate. There are so few beds available that we, as a service provider, we can't accommodate the numbers of people who in fact are homeless. A large population, or a large percentage of that population, choose not to go there because of the way they've been treated. You know, so we don't have enough beds for them, and the beds that we do have, a lot of people don't want to go there.
One of the stigmas that many people on social assistance face, not only by landlords but by the general public, is that people on welfare are somehow abusing the system. But for most of the people on social assistance, they are people who require some sort of income security, and these programs are the last resort for these people. These are people who are facing serious hunger issues, the possibility of homelessness, but instead of being seen as deserving as people who really need these programs to survive. They're seen as criminals by a large part of the public.
The majority of the homeless population that I've dealt with are not so much embarrassed to seek help. They choose not to because they've been through the system so often. They've been mistreated. They've dealt with that prejudice, that discrimination, that attitude that I spoke about earlier. And it really has been a disservice to them. And they know that. They're not stupid. They understand when someone's dissing them, you know? They understand when they're being treated like shit, and they don't like it any more than you and I would, okay? So if they know that they're going to be treated poorly or badly at a particular place or institution or facility or service, they're not going to go back. So they choose not to.
We've heard a lot from people who are experiencing homelessness that it's incredible hardship, that people are faced with incredible decisions about how they have to if they actually have housing, how to balance the need between feeding the kids, paying the rent, maintaining that housing. If people are in shelters, there are incredible barriers and hardships to get out of those shelters into permanent housing. The other thing that we've been finding, though, is that this is more and more common in our community, that this picture of hardship is impacting on more and more people.
You get everything from the 18-year-old who was just kicked out of the house to people who have just gone through nasty divorces and lost their job and find themselves destitute. So that there's quite a wide variety of people in that group, and each one has their own story that's unique to them.
Here in Hamilton, going to school at the time, and my brother came back into town, and we decided that we'd go to Toronto. And at that point in time, we didn't have any living arrangements, and so we were, I guess, basically just living on the street at that point in time. But it was, I guess, a couple of years ago during the summer. So it's not all that bad in the summer, but in the winter months it can get a little trying for sure, you know. All in all, it's just, I guess, kind of living a more or less nomadic lifestyle, and, you know, moving from point A to point B, you know what I mean?
Just in this past year, to the end of November, I serviced 3,300 people in my homelessness program.
Poverty rates among the Aboriginal population are about twice that of the general population. Among women and children, they're way out of the roof. In certain parts of the city, the poverty rate among Aboriginal people is around 80%. There really aren't a lot of good sources of statistical information around the needs of the Aboriginal community in Hamilton.
Probably most obvious in the general society's attitudes towards them. We tend to see them as damaged or sick, or it's almost as if we make them infants, make them incapable, okay? Homeless people are not incapable. To survive when you're homeless suggests that you have an incredible amount of ability and strength and power, because to exist without shelter is a very, very difficult thing to do.
There are a group who basically go from hostel to hostel. They'll do their 10 nights at Good Shepherd. They'll do 10 nights at Mission Services and Salvation Army. These are people who have been homeless for a fair length of time and have been in the hostel system for usually a year or more. And these people who are people who have adapted to living in the hostels, and really they're very reluctant to try any other lifestyle.
A lot of it is because the services are inadequate. A lot of it is because the attitudes that they get, the treatment they get is inappropriate, and in some cases abusive. They have to adhere to rules that really don't make sense, you know? Why are we telling an adult, someone who's in their 40s or 50s, that they have a curfew of 7 o'clock? How much sense does that make? That they can only eat at this time or that time. They can't eat when they're hungry, okay? There are places where they cannot access toilets without a staff to open the door. How much sense does that make?
We didn't have homelessness like in the past. We worked together as a community, just as the same as the Aboriginal community in Hamilton here, to try to bring, to help those people that are less fortunate. And it's not that they're less fortunate, in a physical sense they are, but we acknowledge those people first as human beings. And I know that some organizations within Hamilton have not just focused on Aboriginal people, but they've also helped some non-Aboriginal people, and that's part of our teachings too.
Hamilton is getting the Indian Center van to go around and provide food and all that.
In the spring of 2002, the Hamilton Regional Indian Center, with the financial assistance from the Native Home Providers of Ontario, started a street program that would benefit the homeless people. This program is set up to provide bag lunches and care packages containing hygiene products 1 day a week. The coordinator, Adeline Lewis, will explain how the Homelessness Run provides valuable assistance to the people on the streets of this steel city.
Well, first we start out at Beasley Park, uptown there, and then from there we go to Urban Core, because majority of the people come from Wesley Center. Okay. And sometimes, depending on the time of the month, we run out either at Beasley Park, and then we go to Urban Core, and majority of the people are over there. Well, all the necessities that they need, like underarm deodorant, toothpaste, and shampoo, bar soap, blades. Just so long as they have, we know they don't give out everything, and they get a toothbrush, comb, even pair of socks. It started from May 2002. Well, that's when the first monies came in, and so they started right off the bat, and then I guess word of mouth got out, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger, so now we're up to 200.
We live in Canada or North America, and we're supposed to be one of the richest communities around and or civilizations around, but yet we have people living on the streets, and for me that's just an atrocity. If we can afford to help other countries and third world countries, what about helping our own first?
If you go to a hostel when you're homeless, chances are you're going to be robbed of whatever you might have. There's a very good chance that you're going to experience violence, okay? For women who are homeless, the violence is ×4. 70% of the homeless female population have experienced physical violence and sexual violence, okay? And we're talking a number of times a year, as many as 7 times a year they are assaulted, okay? The male population experiences violence about 5 times a year, guaranteed, okay?
A lot of theft, I guess personal assault as well. That's always serious, and that's always a risk for sure. And if you do befall violence, then there are other injuries that can result from that, but also be lifelong as well.
The In the Cold program is a wonderful program, no disrespect intended, but we have people having to go to different churches on different nights. I mean, how do you follow that if you're homeless? Like, how do you know which church on which night is going to be able to give you shelter? What if you go to the wrong church? Because we've had a number of people here in Hamilton that have died from exposure and other issues.
And Kelly had laid down. It was around June. And And he was just laying there with his sunglasses on. So I said, "Hey, bud, you mind if I take your picture?" I said, "I'm doing a project on the homeless." So I asked him why he was there, laying there, drinking a bottle in the middle of the city, and just being there. He said, "Because that's the way I want it. I give up." And then I found out that he had died. Somebody said he died in London. So I checked that out. And yeah, it was him. But apparently he had been in an accident and he had gotten some money and he took off to London. And he died on the streets there.
Why Kelly isn't homeless anymore? It's unfortunate that that Native person or that Native gentleman has passed away. So he doesn't have to face the issue of homelessness.
Yes, we care that Kelly is no longer here anymore, that he's no longer homeless anymore. And what are we doing about it? You know, how can we put a stop to this so that there's not more Kellys in the future?
And those buttons that they say, well, who's Kelly? And what happened to him? And they know, right? They'll know by people telling that story over and over again that this is not working. None of it is working, right, for the homeless.
We have hundreds, possibly thousands, of recommendations just sitting there. Nobody ever follows up on them.
One of the big problems is in order to get out of the hostel system, most of them need to get onto welfare or disability. And if they've had bad experiences dealing with welfare or disability, they're very reluctant to start through that process again.
Financial. If you don't have an address, you can't get a welfare check, right? So how are you going to change your situation if you can't do that, right?
In terms of getting somebody off the street and in a home is one step, but now maintaining and sustaining that home is another. And usually what happens is the services out here in mainstream are very short term. So as soon as they meet one goal, those services leave you.
Again, people that are homeless face incredible amounts of stigma, whether that comes in at different points. I think it's best understood in terms of when that stigma impacts people that are homeless. It impacts people that are homeless when they're looking for a job, people in terms of physical appearance. They may not have had a chance to shower, so they're not likely to, or they're not likely to have the clothes that it takes to walk into an office space and acquire the job that they're after. When they're looking for housing, there's incredible stigma. And then in a more general sense, like they're excluded from a lot of the planning processes that happen in the first place. So many of the committees and many of the planning sessions that are talking about what we're going to do about the issue of homelessness excludes the people who are homeless. And I think we all need to do a better job of bringing those voices to the table.
What I expect is that you're going to be seeing larger numbers of Aboriginal youth who are going to be seeking emergency shelter in the next 5 or 10 years as that 0 to 14 population sort of becomes teenagers as they move away from home. So there's going to be a lot of serious needs around in the Aboriginal community to provide training and educational opportunities for those youth, and as well as emergency services like emergency food services, emergency shelter services.
I think that there needs to be more awareness. It needs to come right up in their face what has been done to Aboriginal people. And I know there's a lot of multiculturalism within Hamilton and within Toronto and within Canada from a national level, but I don't think Native people should be put in that melting pot. Native people are distinct to this land. They have become homeless within their own land, and that's not fair for Aboriginal people.
Personally, I believe that through working with Native homelessness, the one thing that I've learned the most is the fact that this could be you or me. You know, there's this stigma, there's this myth that, you know, homeless people are your drunken Indians down on the street. Homeless people are your, you know, your women that are drug addicted or alcohol related or even mentally disadvantaged. And all that's a myth. You know, the homeless person could be you or me next.
I'd like to tell people to pay attention, you know, to look around them, to look at other people and what they're experiencing. Sometimes the only thing we can do is be a witness, okay? People are living on the streets, people are homeless, and they will die out there. And unless we pay attention to each and every one of them, the situation's not going to change, okay? So if all we can do is be a witness, then we have that responsibility. If not to each other, at least to ourselves, because there, but for the grace of God, go I.